Hey everyone, your friendly neighborhood gamer Blue here. Today we're starting something new. We're going to be rating the video game that we pushed through in the very first Extremely Bad Gaming series, Assassin's Creed. First off, I want to say that I'm going to minimize the spoilers as much as possible. I know there's going to be some people out there that haven't watched the series yet, and also people that just want to know what kind of experience they should expect before playing the game. So don't worry, I'm not going to mention any specific plot points or anything like that. So, how are we going to rate this thing? Well, I've come up with my own 100-point system. I'd say there's 4 things that most people are concerned with when playing a game. You've got the story, the mechanics of the game, how hard the game is, and how entertaining the game is. Keeping that in mind, I split the 100 points 4 ways, making each of those categories worth 25 points. Without further ado, let's get started. First up, we're going to talk about the story. Again, I'll try to minimize the spoilers as much as possible. Now, maybe back in 2007 this would have passed for an exciting storyline, but now, at least for me, it just doesn't cut it. The story was just way too predictable. You've got your disgraced character who then has to rebuild what they've lost throughout the game. You've got certain people that you need to kill to get through your journey to redemption. They even tell you from the start that there's going to be 9 targets. And yeah, there was a twist at the end, but if you were even remotely paying attention, it wasn't that hard to see coming. And I can say that because I was barely paying attention. Because honestly, I didn't really need to. I knew it was going to come next. But it doesn't stop there. Yes, the main story was predictable, but what actually made it worse was that the secondary storyline involving the Animus and the lab was just bizarre. And I get it, it's supposed to be somewhat intriguing and strange because that's what the character is feeling as well. He doesn't understand what's going on either. And that can be okay in some games, but normally this is resolved by the end. You have closure. And if you're expecting closure in this game, you're just going to be disappointed because there really is no ending to that storyline. They want you to be intrigued enough to buy the second game and see what happens. And at the end, they put puzzles all over the room for what? I still have no idea. Again, presumably this would have been explained in the next game. Before I say what I rated the story, I'll say I would have given it an even lower score, but it does have its redeeming qualities. I appreciate that they at least made some of the targets interesting, and I actually really like the sassiness of the men in the bureaus. It was a nice break from the other kind of boring characters. And I gave them a bonus point just because I thought it was refreshing that the strongest character in the game was a woman. For 2007, that's pretty woke, so I'll give them that. Even though, from my recollection, there were no other female characters other than the people harassing me on the street for money, and the lab assistant, I guess, but she wasn't really a huge focus. With all that in mind, with its simple, yet also somewhat confusing storyline, I'll give it a generous 11 out of 25. Next are the actual mechanics of the game. For me, this includes the controls of the game, the way the character moves, attacks, how the characters flow. I also included the graphics here too. Now, if you watched any of the streams I did, you'll already know how I feel about the mechanics of this game. And I will point out that I wasn't the only one. I had at least 3 people tell me they didn't like the controls either. But I will admit it could have been much, much worse. They were fairly basic controls, which, when I remembered them, worked just fine. But that being said, there were several times where I was holding the block button down and he didn't block, which led to many unfortunate deaths. And while we're talking about unfortunate deaths, do I even need to remind everyone about the dozen times that I drowned in this game? You're telling me this almighty assassin doesn't know how to swim? Come on, folks. And look, I know what people are going to say. Hey, of course he can't swim. He's in robes. He's carrying a sword, a hidden blade, throwing knives. And to that I say, so? He also swan dives off of 100-foot towers into a bale of hay. What's more reasonable? And you're telling me that on that dock level he couldn't have just swam 2 feet and pulled himself up? Please. That aside, I can't even tell you how many times I was running down the street and the character decided to stop and sit on a bench or climb a wall that he wasn't supposed to. And for the graphics, I mean, it's 2007, they're not spectacular, but they also don't affect gameplay, so I'll give them a bit of a deduction just because it's old, but otherwise it holds up. The graphics are good. So, all of that together with simple but unreliable controls and the somewhat baffling mechanics where a man can jump off of huge towers but drown immediately in water, I give a rating of 14. Again, the graphics were fine, the controls were mostly okay, they just weren't that reliable. Moving on to difficulty. After all, this is really the main thing that the other series is about, playing games on their highest difficulty. But this game doesn't, in fact, have any difficulty settings. So what that tells me is that this game should be something right down the middle. If done properly, that would mean that some people will find the game hard, and some people will find it too easy. And I think that was actually done pretty well. A lot of it was pretty easy, even for me, and some of it took me a bit longer. So I think that it did pretty much as well as it could have done. But I can't give it full points. For full points, it would have had to have those difficulty options. Because yes, for me this is perfect, but like I said, for some people it's going to be way too easy, and for some people it's going to be way too hard. So I can only give it a 20 out of 25. Still pretty good. And for the last category, we've got the overall entertainment value of the game. Because what are video games for other than entertainment? Here we're talking about how fun it was to play, would I keep playing to finish the game 100% and get all the achievements, would I recommend to other people, or would I even play it again myself? In a way, it has a lot to do with how the other categories work together. You know, if the game's way too hard, people might not want to play. If the story and the characters are awesome, people want to finish it and play it again. Now, I will say that I did have fun playing it, for the most part, except for a couple moments here and there, of course, but I did have fun. But it was mostly fun because I was streaming it and making it more fun for myself. Having other people around makes it more fun. And that was even more obvious when we were really low on viewers. In fact, I'm pretty sure that I even said one time that if I were by myself, I probably would have stopped playing and come back another day. And that's just the main story. There is no way, even if I were streaming, that I would go back, finish all the investigations, save all the people, and get all the flags. There were hundreds of flags. Hundreds! No! Keeping that in mind, would I recommend the game to other people? I would say that if you wanted to play through all the Assassin's Creed games, if you're the kind of person that wants to play through every volume in a series, then for sure, play it. That's who I am too. The only reason that you'll notice I'm skipping volumes in a series is because I want to focus on different games, newer games, and of course, games that are free to play. If that's you, then I would suggest you do what I do and push through the main story, and that's it. If that's not you, honestly, I might skip this one and head for a different Assassin's Creed game. I've been told the newer ones are much better, and I'm sure at some point I'll test them out myself. I'll also remind you that this is when you account for the story, the mechanics of the game, and everything else about the gameplay. So I mean, if I can't recommend it to people, I'm sorry to say that I can't give it a great score. I'm going to have to give it a 12. I know, it sounds harsh, and I do feel bad, but if I don't even want to do the side quests, the story isn't great, and the mechanics are a bit off, 12 might even be a bit generous. But to me, I would say that anything below a 10, I'm not even sure I would want to finish the main story. Just to recap, that gives a total of 11 for the story, 14 for mechanics, 20 for difficulty, and a 12 for entertainment. Adding that up, we get a final BLU rating of 57 out of 100. Again, I actually feel kind of bad. The game is a classic, it's a huge video game series, but I guess it hasn't aged well. Anyway, that's it for the first BLU rating. I'm sure some of you have your own opinions, and I want to hear them. Post in the comments below your rating for each category. I'll be doing one of these for each game that I play. If you want to check those games out, you can watch the full streams or the action-packed, extremely bad gaming episodes. Or, if you want to stay ahead of the game and see what I'm doing right now, you can check out my Twitch account to see what game we're playing. In fact, you might even be able to join in and play some games yourself. And of course, as always, don't forget to subscribe below to see the next videos. See you next time.